Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Death Over Drinks. If you are new to our channel, we talk about true crime, murder, blood, gore, all while drinking a really good cocktail. Which, Sarah, what are you drinking tonight?
I did this a couple episodes ago, the pomegranate martini, but I made it differently this time. So I'll share it. I'll share my new recipe in the description.
That looks perfect, all nice and bloody and
I know.
delicious.
It's
Perfect for
good.
this story. I am drinking what I call Bloodlust. So it is definitely a sweeter drink. I love it. It's more rum based than anything. So, again, I will leave the ingredients and how to make this drink in the description below. So, if you do want to make your drinks with us, definitely join us. But we're going to get into some gory details with this story. So let's go ahead and kill it and jump right into it. So Richard Chase, he started off, he suffered from mental illness growing up. He also had abuse from his father, and he had what they call the McDonald triad, which is the perfect psycho cocktail in itself, which he had the qualities of cruelty towards animals, frequently wetting the bed, as well as setting small fires. So those three things were the perfect cocktail for our upcoming psychopath. He was, in and out of mental hospitals growing up. He was kicked out of the house. He was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, which totally makes sense. This was at the age of 25. And he believed he was a walking corpse, like his heart had just stopped. So he was just walking around dead. He also had paranoia that his cranial bones were shifting throughout his head. So he was like constantly looking in the mirror. He ended up shaving his head just so he could physically see it. I mean, it was really creepy. So not surprising that he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He was actually so again, going back to saying that he was in and out of mental hospitals, in 1976, he ended up injecting himself with rabbit blood, which he did end up getting sepsis from. And later, the nurses and medical personnel would end up nicknaming him Dracula because he also cut the heads off birds and drank their blood. After being in and out of the mental institutions, he was let go because they put him on medications and they deemed him safe to roam society. Later, he ended up having roommates who eventually kicked him out as well, but he started small again. So not only was he cutting off the heads of these birds and drinking their blood, when he was let out, he was again murdering small animals and went as far as blending their organs with a soda and drinking it. Ugh, I can't. I just can't. So after that, and this is in August of 1977, it wouldn't be too long that the police found his truck near Lake Tahoe, and they found blood all over the truck seats. They found a bucket that was full of blood, and also an organ, which later they found out was a liver. It looked like a liver. And the police were kind of looking around, trying to search for, who would own this truck. And sure enough, they found Richard Chase, and he was kind of off in the distance, completely naked, drenched in blood, and he took off running. He's like, okay, bye. And they did end up catching up to him. They caught him. He was arrested, which they did the whole DNA test on the blood, and they found out that it was cow's blood. So a cow's blood and cow liver. And they just let him go, not even thinking about the fact that, oh, he cut up a cow and was pretty much like dancing in the desert in his blood. He's good to go. He's fine. It didn't take him long after that to find his next victim. So he was kind of driving around. He had a 22 caliber pistol on him, and he ended up shooting 51-year-old Ambrose Griffin. And this was an older man who was just helping his wife carry in the groceries, and he shot him right in the chest. And by the time the police were called and got to him, he was still alive, but he did end up passing away, and he did bleed out to death. So, and Richard Chase just got this thrill off of it. So he wanted to continue his obsession with killing people. In January 23rd, 1978, he found his next victim, Teresa Wallen, a 3-month pregnant woman who was at home by herself, and her door was unlocked. And to him, this was an invitation to just walk right in. It was like that was his way of justifying what was to come. He killed Teresa by using a butcher knife from her own kitchen, sliced her stomach open, pulled her organs out, all while also using a used yogurt cup to drink the blood. So, January 27th, 1978, 4 days after his most recent murder of Teresa, he entered the home of Evelyn Mira with her friend Dan Meredith, her 6-year-old son, Jason, and her 22-month-old nephew, David. He would then murder Dan, who was found in the hallway, gunshot to the head. He killed Evelyn, and with her, he sliced open her stomach, also removing multiple organs, which tended to be his pattern. She was partially cannibalized, as well as sodomizing her corpse. He also attempted to remove one of her eyes, which was unsuccessful. He also killed her 6-year-old son by gunshot to the head, and also killed David, who wouldn't be found until much later. And he ended up decapitating him, and he was found months later behind a church. After he murdered the Evelyn and Dan and the 2 children, a visitor had knocked on the door, which then led Chase to flee the scene using Dan's car and taking David's body with him. And later they would identify Chase using his fingerprints that were found in Evelyn's blood. He was found and he was arrested. After getting arrested, they did find in Chase's apartment that there were utensils stained with blood, as well as human brains in his fridge. Sound familiar? We'll go back to that. He was found guilty of 6 counts of murder and sentenced to death by gas chamber, which of course they did try to plead not guilty by insanity, which was unsuccessful. And of course, we never got to see him die by gas chamber because he decided to hoard all of his anti-anxiety medication, enough to be lethal to him, and he OD'd in his cell on December 26, 1980. So,
yeah, some similarities to our last one.
A little bit. He started off with animal killing. He got off on eating people, and he had human remains in his fridge. When I was reading this story, I just was connecting the dots. I'm like, wow, okay. Like, why do they all have to be? I guess you kind of have to be similar with the mind of a killer, but I'm like, those are pretty gruesome. And he was caught fairly quickly. He was 27 years old by the time he was put in prison.
So this one had some interesting aspects to it, though, at least I think. Like the paranoid schizophrenia always kind of interests me, and I don't know why it always has. And I think because it's more of like that mental mindset and like, yeah, is this person really insane? Like even when like his cranial bones separating and he had to shave himself bald just so he can like watch, the plates move, you know what I mean? And then like I even read in one article where he thought he was deficient in vitamin C, and so he got an orange and he was rubbing it, up here on his forehead, thinking his brain needed vitamin C.
Yeah, it was like a way for his body to absorb it instead of just eating the orange.
This guy is
just gonna rub it on my face.
This is not okay. He is not okay.
He's not. And I'm sorry, like, you can't just put somebody on medications and expect them to be fine. Like, You know how long it takes for antidepressant and anti-anxiety medications or antipsychotic medications in general to take effect? I mean, it can take
Well, not
months.
only that, but to get the right dosage and to actually
Well, that's
find
what
the
I'm
right
saying.
pill. Yeah, because
Yeah.
it can take months.
Hmm.
Yeah, that
So they're
guy.
just like, oh, he's pulling a an Ozzy Osbourne with birds, and
Ew,
but
I
we put
know.
him on medications. He's fine.
Well,
He's
rabbits
harmless.
and birds and cats is what I read.
Yes.
And like, okay, so his parents, his freaking parents, right? Like his mom did nothing to help him out. Yes, pushing it under the rug. Like I had
Mhm.
read in one article where, she had opened the door and she found him standing there holding her bloody cat.
Yeah.
And she was like, I'm just not going to do anything about that. It's okay, son. It's okay. Just come
I
on
normal
inside.
people would be horrified. Just leave it. I'll get rid of it later.
We'll
Like,
clean that
just
up for
come
you.
inside.
Like, oh, that again. Okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Again, I mean, like you go back to parents' intuition, like something's wrong, but you just don't want to deal
Yeah.
with it. And that's
Yeah.
why back in the day too, they had mental institutions, and it wasn't even just for mentally ill. It was for people who had family members where they did have like some kind of disorder, or like they were just different, and they're like, here, just go to this institution and you're fine. Like I just don't want to pretty much deal with you, so I'm going
Or
to get on
like
with my
back
life
in
and
the
I'm going to
day
leave you
when
here.
women defied their men. So the men had an excuse to
Yes.
put them in an institution. It's not
Mhm.
funny, but it's
I mean,
like when I think back on those things, because sometimes, like, you know how we watch those paranormal shows and they always have those places on there and they have that story. And I'm just sitting there like, so fucked up, man.
mhm.
But
Well,
anyway,
and I think back to did you ever see that movie Changeling with Angelina
yes,
Jolie?
long time ago, though. I can't really recall it.
Yeah. Yeah. So like when her son had disappeared, and then they brought back this boy, and she's like, that's not my son. Like, and
Mm.
she swore up and down, and he was like playing this little part, and everyone kept telling her, like, no, that's your son. And she even like went to people all over, and they were like, she was like, are you going to testify that pretty much like this kid's a fraud? Like, he's not my son. And they put her in a mental institute.
Yeah.
And then come to find out, the kid admitted, because they ended up finding that his picture was one of many that this kid pointed out, that who was the accomplice of whoever was killing these boys. And he came out with, oh yeah, I lied. I just wanted to be on TV. It's like, you little fucker. Like, do you realize like what you did to that poor mother, all because you wanted to be on TV? It just,
Yeah. Well, it makes me
it's
think about even like the mental stability though of the mother. So the father was abusive, apparently, right? And then
mhm.
like, so this part, warning y'all, warning. So
Viewer discretion advised.
he couldn't get his shit up when he was teenage years, like 18-ish. And he was like, something's wrong with me. And so that's when he first went to a psychiatrist. And that's when they're like, I think the cause of this is because of repressed anger. And so
Mhm.
that makes me think, okay, the abuse from the father, right? Maybe like witnessing it for himself, his mother, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But what about all that other stuff where like he thought his blood was turning into powder? Like he literally had a fear of losing his blood, which is one
Mhm.
of the reasons why he decided to eat organs, liquefy them in a blender
Mhm.
with soda and drink it, and then but also just drink the blood of animals and then eventually human beings. Oh, I
Yeah.
found this interesting too. And you had mentioned this about like the unlocked doors. So the Vampire of Sacramento, right? So I thought it was funny where I was like, I like annotated it in my notes. So I was like, yeah, isn't that a thing for like a vampire, like you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You have
right.
to be invited, and that's like the old
Yes.
school tradition of vampires where it's
How
like you
crazy
can't
is that?
enter.
And during his
Mhm.
interviews, that's what he said. Like it was an unlocked door, so that was my invitation. Like that,
Yeah.
it was his justification to enter in and to kill
Mhm.
and
Yep.
to drink their blood.
I really think he fully believed he was a vampire because
Yes,
he walked around thinking that his heart
had
wasn't
stopped or
beating.
yeah.
The
Mhm.
blood gave him power. The unlocked doors were a justification, an
Yes.
invitation. And, you know, I
So
just,
you know
and
what's
I,
crazy? Oh, go ahead.
oh no, I was just going to say, I just want to know, like, when I was thinking about him being out in the desert or whatever, like near the lake, just naked and drenched in
Oh,
blood.
like when he was killing the cows.
Yes, like I thought witches right away. Like that was
Oh.
like I I
Yeah,
don't
I can
know.
see that.
I
Yeah,
mean, think about it. They like did a lot of
that sacrifice.
animal sacrifice, you know, very I mean, it's very demonic, you know, very black magic type deal. And but I just picture him like just sitting there and then just taking off. Like I don't know, like it sounds funny in my head. It's so not. But like when I
So,
was reading that part, I just started giggling. I was all
so when I read that, like, I totally don't see him sitting down or anything. I literally see him like stalking up to a cow, like just standing there all
naked.
chewing its cud. And he's all, I'm gonna get you. That's Jack though. But dude, so those cops when they found out it was a dead cow, it's like, did you not know that was weird?
Right. Well, that's what I was saying. I'm like, you know, the fact that like yeah, maybe it's not a human person, which is very good reason to arrest somebody, but did it not occur to you that maybe he needs some other kind of help in
Like,
the meantime? I'm like,
here's your sign. The trial on this one, it surprised me. Like it honestly surprised me. Because
that he didn't get the insanity plea.
yeah, I mean, okay, so I'm trying to put myself into like a juror's point of view, which is hard to because you're not hearing everything the jurors know. Like we have little information based on what they actually had to see for their own eyes, where we just got like
Mhm.
articles and stuff. But, and I think it's just because of how gruesome and horrible the crimes were, like, especially, I mean, especially when it comes to like the little baby, you know what I mean? And I think they're
Mhm.
just like, fuck this guy, like you're going down, you're not going to a mental institution, you're going to go to jail where they have its own justice system. So but
Yeah.
at the same time it's like, no, this guy was truly insane. Because going back to like my comment
Mhm.
about the orange and the vitamin C on his forehead, like, and him thinking that his heart had stopped and his blood had turned into powder, and so he needed to drink blood in order to survive. I mean, that was his
Mhm.
thing. It just shocked me, I
Yeah.
guess.
And I'm sorry, but it pisses me off that he got to off himself first. It really
Oh,
does.
man.
I
Yeah.
know he's insane. I know, like I get it. But obviously he was sane enough to know to like hoard all of his
Okay, I thought
freaking
the same thing.
anti-anxiety meds.
So, okay, yeah. And then, okay, his fellow prisoners, again, like kind of like Jeffrey Dahmer, were so disturbed by him and
Oh
what he had
yeah.
done, they encouraged him to kill
Yes,
himself. So I'm
that's
wondering if they
right.
told him, because, like, yeah, because I thought the same
They
thing.
did
Like,
tell him to kill himself.
he had the wherewithal to hoard his pills and know that he would kill himself by overdose. But then I'm thinking, okay, but his fellow inmates are telling him to kill himself, and so I'm wondering if they were telling him how to.
Oh,
I don't know,
that's a
that
good
was just a
point.
thought. But yeah, I thought the same thing. I was all, yeah, he
That's
knew
like
how to do that.
so, and here's my opinion on this too, because you know, anytime you see somebody who does such a gruesome, horrendous, am I saying that
Horrendous.
right?
No,
Horrendous.
I put my mic arm on mute so I could take a drink, and I was all, oh, she needs me.
I don't know. I'm buzzed already. like, wait, that doesn't sound right. At least I caught myself.
I do that shit all the time. Like once like I have like 2 glasses of wine to me, I can tell my words start getting a little slower. And it's not like I'm like full on drunk when I'm just like,
it's like brain fart. Anyway, so
but heinous is a word. I can't even remember.
Maybe that's what I was trying to say.
Heinous or horrendous. You were like, I think you were mixing up the two.
Oh, dang it. Hold on. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Death Over Drinks. We do post every Wednesday. We do post some funny stuff as well if you're interested in that. We do mainly stick to true crime. But, as you can see, we sometimes go into tangents. So we do have some mini series with that as well. Also, when we're pretty tipsy.
Especially when we're tipsy.
Again, drink responsibly.